The old woman thought it was just another quiet morning. Her tiny village street was empty, the sun barely touching the cracked pavement. But then she heard it, a tiny whimper. She turned and froze. A small puppy stood in the middle of the road, trembling, its little paws raised as if begging her for help. But this was no ordinary plea. The puppy's eyes were wide with panic, darting back toward a dark alley as if something terrible waited there. With every step she took toward him, the puppy backed up, guiding her, leading her. And when she finally discovered what he was trying to show her, the entire village would never forget it. Before we start, make sure to hit like, share, and subscribe. And really, I'm curious, where are you watching from? Drop your country name in the comments. I love seeing how far our stories travel. The morning sun had barely climbed over the rooftops when the old woman stepped outside, her worn slippers brushing softly against the dusty village street. Every day began the same way, a slow, steady walk past the quiet houses, her frail hands clasped behind her back. She liked these peaceful moments, the silence that wrapped around her like a familiar shawl. Most people still slept at this hour, and the world felt gentler, kinder. Birds chirped faintly from distant trees, and a cool breeze carried the scent of damp earth. For years, this routine had been her comfort, her way of greeting a lonely but predictable day. As she reached the end of the street, a faint sound made her pause. It wasn't the wind, nor the usual rustle of leaves. It was softer, almost a tiny cry. She turned her head slowly, her eyes narrowing as she searched for the source. Then she saw him. A small golden puppy stood in the middle of the road, trembling so much his legs wobbled beneath him. His fur was dusty, his ribs faintly visible, and his little tail hung low, unsure and scared. What startled her most was how he lifted his front paws, rising onto his hind legs as though pleading. His wide, shining eyes locked onto hers, begging, desperate, silently asking for help. The old woman took a cautious step toward him, whispering softly as if approaching a frightened child. But instead of running into her arms, the puppy shuffled backward, his tiny paws pattering anxiously against the ground. He barked once high-pitched, urgent, then glanced over his shoulder toward a narrow alley. It wasn't the kind of bark that asked for food or affection. It was a plea. Every time she moved closer, he retreated a little, stopping only to make sure she was still following. His tail quivered, not in fear, but in desperation. Something was pulling him back to that alley, something he needed her to see, and he refused to leave without her. She stopped at the edge of the alley, her breath catching as the puppy turned back to face her. His tiny chest rose and fell rapidly, and his eyes, those wide, shimmering eyes, held something far heavier than simple fear. They were pleading, warning, urging her to understand. He let out a soft whine, stepping closer, then retreating again as if afraid she might give up and walk away. A chill ran through her, not from the morning air, but from the strange certainty settling in her bones. This puppy wasn't lost. He wasn't wandering. He was guiding her toward something hidden in the shadows, something he couldn't face alone. With a steadying breath, she stepped into the narrow alley, her sandals scraping against the uneven stones. The puppy hurried a few paces ahead, glancing back every few seconds to make sure she hadn't stopped. The deeper they went, the darker it became. Sunlight barely reached the ground, and a faint, uneasy silence filled the space. She noticed little things, scratches along the wall, splinters scattered near the ground, and a soft echo that didn't sound like the wind. Her heartbeat quickened, but she pressed on, guided by the trembling creature who refused to leave her behind. Something was waiting at the end of the alley. Something the puppy desperately needed her to uncover. As she neared the end of the alley, the puppy suddenly stopped beside a collapsed wooden crate, pawing at it with frantic urgency. The woman's breath tightened. The crate looked crushed, as if something heavy had fallen on it. Broken slats poked outward like splinters of a shattered cage. Then she heard it faint, muffled whimpers coming from beneath the debris. Her eyes widened. She knelt slowly, her aging knees trembling as she pressed her ear closer. The soft cries grew louder, layered more than one voice, tiny and desperate. Heart pounding, she lifted a broken plank and her hands froze. Inside, squeezed beneath the wreckage, were two more puppies, weak, injured, barely moving. The little hero had been calling her, not for himself, but for them. The old woman's heart clenched as she saw the two fragile bodies trapped beneath the splintered crate. There was no time to hesitate. With trembling hands, she pushed aside the broken wood, ignoring the sting of sharp edges against her skin. The first puppy whimpered weakly as she lifted him out, his tiny body limp and cold. The second was even weaker, his breaths shallow, barely noticeable. She cradled them against her chest, whispering soft comforts the way a mother would. Beside her, the brave little puppy, the one who had begged for help, pressed close, nudging her wrist as if urging her to hurry. She wasn't saving just puppies. She was saving a family. As she gathered the injured puppies closer, something on the ground caught her eye, a trail of fresh boot prints pressed deep into the dirt. They led toward the alley's entrance, then vanished abruptly, as if someone had been standing there, watching. A cold shiver crawled up her spine. These puppies hadn't simply been trapped. Someone had left them here, hidden away where no one would find them. The broken crate wasn't an accident. It was deliberate. She scanned the shadows, her heartbeat trembling in her chest. The alley suddenly felt too quiet, too still, as if danger still lingered nearby. The brave puppy whimpered and pressed against her leg, reminding her why she couldn't stay another second, clutching the two injured puppies close to her chest. The old woman rose slowly, her breath unsteady but determined. The brave little one stayed pressed to her ankle, guiding her steps as if afraid she might fall. The alley seemed longer on the way out, every shadow heavier, every sound sharper. But she didn't stop, not once. When she reached the street, sunlight washed over them, warming the trembling bodies in her arms. She tightened her grip protectively and hurried toward her small house at the corner of the lane. The brave puppy trotted beside her, never leaving her side, as if guarding the only person who had answered his desperate plea. By the time she reached her gate, a few neighbors had noticed the scene. An old woman rushing home with trembling puppies in her arms, and another anxious one glued to her feet. Curiosity spread quickly. Doors opened. Voices rose. Soon, a small crowd gathered outside her yard. When she gently laid the injured puppies on a warm blanket, gasps rippled through the onlookers. One woman covered her mouth in shock. Another shook her head in disbelief. Who would do something like this? Someone whispered. A man crouched beside the crate, pieces the woman had carried back, tracing the sharp breaks with his fingers. "This wasn't an accident," he said quietly. The villagers exchanged troubled glances, anger, sadness, and fear growing in their eyes. The village veterinarian arrived quickly, kneeling beside the tiny bodies with practiced gentleness. He examined them carefully, his brow furrowing for a moment, then softening with relief. "They're weak," he murmured, "but they can be saved." Those words washed over the old woman like warm sunlight. She watched as the vet cleaned their wounds, wrapped their paws, and gave them warm milk drop by drop. Neighbors offered towels, blankets, and even old baskets to make a soft resting place. Meanwhile, the brave puppy, the one who had begged for help, refused to leave her side. He kept nudging her ankle, as if checking she was still there. By evening, the puppies were resting safely, and hope finally replaced fear. Days passed, and the puppies grew stronger, their tiny tails wagging again with life. The villagers often stopped by to check on them, each one touched by the old woman's courage. But the bravest of them all, the puppy who had begged for her help, never left her side. He followed her everywhere, sleeping at her feet, watching her with eyes full of gratitude and trust. One evening, as the village gathered in her yard, someone said softly, "He chose you." The woman smiled, her heart warming in a way she hadn't felt in years. She knelt beside him, stroking his soft fur. "No," she whispered. "He saved them. And he saved me too."